Steve Mielhausen here for SportingNews.com, and getting back into the video podcasting, and joining me today in a unique set of circumstances from the Beyond the Cage podcast. They air on YouTube.com as well. Dave Sadler in the house. And Dave, not the way I want to talk to you, my friend.
No, it's been a while since we've talked. Every time there seems to be something, we're always texting back and forth. But hey, the stars lined up, and not the best circumstances. But yeah, let's get into it.
No, not always. And you hit it on the head. Not the best unique circumstances, as it was confirmed a little while ago from I don't even know who. I'll go with Kevin Ioli from Yahoo Sports. He was really the first one that really broke it. That UFC 183 headliners Anderson Silva and Nick Diaz failed drug tests prior. Diaz failed for marijuana metabolites during a urine test after the fight at UFC 183, and Anderson Silva tested positive for two drugs, for drostanolone metabolites, which indicates the use of an anabolic steroid, as well as androsterone, which is a form of an endogenous testosterone. That little sentence right there was from my good friend and our good friends at MMAJunkie.com. And Dave, we'll just start when you first heard about it, Dave. What were your thoughts? What were you thinking, and how are you feeling right now?
With Diaz, not surprised. Is anybody surprised that there was marijuana metabolites in that man? That wasn't very surprising. I kind of had an oh shit moment when it was Anderson Silva, because I don't get paid to do the podcast that I do, but this is a sport that I love. Just completely random. I not even realizing. I mean, I have MMA shirts on. I got an MMA T-shirt on underneath. I love this stuff. I can't get enough. There's pictures all over my wall. I love it. And arguably the two biggest faces of the company have been popped for drug tests in the last month. And it drives me crazy that these guys are at that high of a level. And, it baffles me that they're at that high of a level and they're that great of martial artists, and they have to be on something. We hear the excuses all the time. To get to this level, you got to be on something. Well, I don't believe that. I think there's far less people in the UFC that are on something that aren't on something than are on something, and It just hurts. I sent you an emoticon in a message, and it was like the one where the guy was like, "Rah!" And that's exactly that's exactly how I felt. It was just, it's not good. And the one thing that drives me really nuts, Steve, is this: if you go to the hospital, say you got a sore throat, real bad sore throat, and you go to the hospital or your doctor. They do a throat culture where they stick that Q-tip that's like 6 feet long in the back of your throat.
Not a big fan of that one.
No, I don't think anybody is. But it takes 15 minutes, and they come back and they say, "Yeah, you got strep throat. Here's your antibiotics." You mean to tell me, with the millions and millions of dollars, especially in Nevada, they can't drug test Anderson Silva and get a result before they fight? That's the thing that's baffling to me.
Kind of go to what you're saying, and this has been really a big thing on Twitter, and everyone's been, like you said, and rightfully so, everyone's been really upset by that last statement that you just said. And I'll start with Nick, and we can't be surprised, and just, and I was very critical of Nick Diaz after the fight. I wrote my signature article after the fights, the good, the bad, and the dirty from each show, and just the beginning of the fight and the way he acted throughout, the opening round, and, then you look at the fifth round, the way he was acting, and you can even go, Dave, to, missing the open workout because he didn't want to be seen by the UFC embedded camera people. It was going to screw him up. He plays to the beat of his own drummer, Don't get me wrong, and I have absolutely, I like guys that do that, but when it comes to being a professional, this is your job. He got a reported $500,000. That's not including sponsorships, pay-per-view points. He's probably looking at about $3 or $4 million. It's indications I've been given so far, just contacting some of the people in the pay-per-view market and the pay-per-view industry from the cable companies. This pay-per-view is looking like it's going to do really well. It had over 500,000 searches on Google. That's a pretty good indicator that this pay-per-view is going to do really well. And over 1.56 million viewers watched the prelims. The prelims, not just the card, the prelims. So let's take a look at that. Now it's from our good friend Jason Floyd from the MMAReport.com or MMAReport.com. I'm sorry, Jason. But the indicator that this card was going to do really well. He's going to make a lot of money. Anderson Silva with $800,000, $600 to show, $200 to win. And his pay-per-view points, sponsorships, he's probably looking $6, $7, $8 million. Why risk all that? And you brought up something interesting. Why wasn't this given sooner? Why didn't we know? The out competition test was given by the commission, but the commission sent the test to Salt Lake City with a company called the Sports Medicine Research and Testing Laboratory. That was a company that did John Jones's testing and Daniel Cormier's testing, and that seems like Nevada's go-to people. Bob Bennett told MMAfighting.com that there's, and Francisco Aguilar also talked to MMAfighting.com, and not very happy by the fact that it took this long to get the test results. And we'll get into that in a minute. And I got some very strong thoughts on that, but just to clear that up. But what do you think when it was Anderson Silva? Not just Nick, we expect that from Nick Diaz. Nick's going to be Nick. And I think Nick Diaz is done fighting, and hopefully he is done fighting. But what did you think of when it was Anderson Silva?
He's the face. I mean, he's on the beginning of every video game. He's on the beginning of every clip when he front kicks Vitor. When like the best submissions. He's on there when he taps out Chael Sonnen. I mean, he's all over. He's arguably the most recognized person in the UFC, and it's just like, I don't know. Can you relate it a little bit, Steve, to the day that you found out that pro wrestling was predetermined? I guess is the best word to say.
Real, damn it!
It's still real, damn it!
It's real to me, man. I did not know it was fake.
Yeah, no, I mean, to me, it's kind of like it's baffling. It's baffling, and I don't want to sound like that guy in the YouTube video. It's real to me, but it hurts because I mean, it hurts because it's like, I don't know. It's hard to describe. I don't know. It's like somebody, you see your grandpa or something as an invincible guy, like the greatest, like the patriarch to your family, and you don't want to see him be sick as he gets older. I mean, it's kind of like that. This isn't how Anderson Silva is supposed to leave MMA. Anderson Silva is supposed to knock, he's supposed to throw a 1-2 combination and knock Diaz clear across the cage and then just walk out. That's what's supposed to happen with Anderson Silva, not this.
And I heard I was downstairs. I was doing some stuff and then doing a little bit of work, and I kept hearing my phone, and I'm like, why is my phone going off? I'm looking at my wife. I'm like, she's like, well, you ain't get that phone. I'm like, I'm setting up our basement downstairs, which took me 2 years to do, and I'm like, I'm wanting to get this little stuff done here, and it's just going on. I'm like, what? And what the fuck's going on? So I go up, and my phone, I got over 40 texts, I got 15 emails, I got DMs on Twitter, I'm inboxed all over my Facebook, and I'm like, I'm just in shock, Like you said, it's Anderson Silva. A guy people said, pound for pound, the best fighter, the greatest fighter of all time, the pound for pound king. And then it was crushing, you know. And I'm a big baseball guy, I always have been. And I said this to you off air, and I'll say it now. This was like, and I thought of this, and I saw it on Twitter too. And some of our colleagues are on the same page here, and I'm like, this is like Derek Jeter turning into Barry Bonds.
Mm-hmm.
I was a big Barry Bonds guy. I had Barry Bonds' rookie card. It was valued at hundreds and thousands of dollars. Not hundreds of thousands, but thousands of dollars. As soon as I found out he with the amphetamines and then with the HGH, I cut up that rookie card quicker than you can say hello.
How about this? How about this card?
It meant no value to me.
Yeah.
That makes me want to cringe.
Yeah. No.
You know, you said, Dave, that, you know, you do your podcast, you do it for fun, you know, and you don't get paid, and you know, and I do get paid to write this stuff and interview the top fighters in the world, and it's hard, you know, because yeah, in one hand you stay objective, but at the end of the day, like you did, like you said, you're a fan. At the end of the day, I got into the sport because I'm a fan. Yeah, it's nice to get paid. Okay, yeah, it's nice. It helps provide for my family, you know, and I can live in this house. I can talk to you and talk to the fans around the world and write for, in my mind, the greatest website in the world, sportingnews.com. And, you know, I feel like let down. Yeah. I feel let down. It was a guy that fans around the world adore, you know, for his personality. You know, so jovial. He's really good with the fans. Not good with us, but good with the fans. You know, and I think even in the last couple of years, I think he's really come around in terms of talking to us. And I talked to him a couple of weeks ago, and I was on that conference call for UFC 183, and he was jovial. He was a little agitated at times. He was tired of talking about the leg, which I understand.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it sucks. You know, because everyone loves him. You know, and now is his legacy tarnished? You know, and that's, you know, you're getting that from a lot of people. They're like, the legacy's tarnished. He's done. He's a phony. Is his legacy tarnished, Jay? Because everyone says, oh, he's, you know, the guy was on a 17-fight winning streak. He was 16-0 in the UFC until he ran into Chris Weidman. Was he clean the whole time?
Those are questions that I mean, honestly, we'll never know. I think that his legacy should be tarnished because it goes back to what we were talking about a little bit off air. I'm a huge Kat Zingano fan. I'm a huge Eddie Wineland fan. I'm a huge Brian Ebersol fan. These are all people that I've had close interactions with. And I'm not just saying those three people. There's a lot of people who don't do anything illegal and who haven't been popped on test and stuff like that. And they're working 2-3 jobs, you know, like in Kat's case, single mother trying to raise a 7-year-old. She just won another fight to be the #1 contender, and she made $18,000 at the fight. But we have to focus on Anderson Silva making $5 million a fight, you know, with sponsors and pay-per-view points and all that. So yes, maybe it's selfish on my part, but I think his reputation should be tarnished. What the run that he went on was impressive, yes, but we can't go back and retest him. So, I mean, it's weird. I don't want it to be tarnished, but I think it should be tarnished. It's a weird situation, but you know, it's not fair to other people. You know, Steve. I got a whole list. I got a whole thing of UFC cards right here, right? And it's just like I'm just flipping through: Dan Hardy, Bigfoot Silva, Glover Teixeira, Ricardo Almeida, Joseph Benavidez, Stipe Miocic. Never once hear anything drug-related with any of those guys. And those are just randoms.
Bigfoot Silva.
Oh.
Unfortunately.
Well, if it's Bigfoot...
I like Bigfoot. Bigfoot is a nice guy. I've talked to Bigfoot a couple times, and one of the nicer guys in the sport. He really is. You know, and a lot of these guys and girls are... I talked to Kat before her last fight, and You know, you could tell how nervous she was. You know, and it was a big fight for her, and a lot on the line. And I think she's going to make a little more than $18,000 coming up on February the 28th out in Los Angeles, California. But that's for another time. But
yep.
But what you're saying is correct. And it's what everyone's been saying on Twitter and Facebook. And texting some of the fighters in the industry and talking to them a little bit, and they can't believe it. They're in shock.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to name the fight, just high caliber UFC fighters. Guys that have upper class guys, upper echelon guys that have fought for the title, current champions, not just in the UFC but Bellator. I've talked to them. And just trying to talk to some journalists, and it's like and everyone kept bringing up to me Derek Jeter and the whole Barry Bonds scenario, and and it does tarnish his legacy. I'll go to the question I asked you, and it does. At the end of the day, it does. Whether we want to admit it or not, it does.
Mm-hmm.
Because, someone brought this up to me, and it was an interesting point, and they were like, well, how do we know he was doing beforehand? But do we know? No, we don't.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't like just something, I took it one time. Give me a break. You didn't take it one time. It's like that whole thing with Andy Pettit. I took HGH like 2 or 3 times. Yeah, no. Okay, yeah, sure. I'm not going to believe you. The whole world doesn't believe you. But he admitted he did it, and he moved on. But he was a cheater. I don't believe any of these guys when they say, I did it one time. That is the biggest crock of crap I've ever heard in my life. And I'm not, I don't want to be too candid, but I'm going to be candid enough to where it is a load of crap. And then with John Jones, I only did cocaine in college, and I did it this one time 4 weeks before one of the biggest fights of my career. It's BS. And if Anderson Silva comes out in the next day or two, and he tries to say, this was the only time I did it, he's lying.
So if you're
his life is tarnished. It means nothing to me now. Absolutely not.
So if you're in Anderson Silva's camp, you expect me to believe that this is, he just tried this the one time. His leg snapped in half, and in 13 months he came back and fought 5 rounds in the UFC. I mean,
that's believable because Paul George looks like from the Indiana Pacers broke his leg, and he's gonna play this season. It looks like he's gonna be playing him within the next 4 to 6 weeks. It can happen. I'm not doubting because of the injury. He was out for 13 months. It wasn't like he came back in 6 months and was fighting Chris Weidman or Nick Diaz or anyone in the middle, Michael Bisping, Yoel Romero, whoever in the middleweight division.
Right.
He was off for 13 months, and I don't want to accuse him of doing anything. I really don't, but this tarnishes his legacy. I will no longer view him, and I wrote this in an article I did on Saturday after the fights on Saturday night. I put pound for pound the best fighter in the world today. The greatest of all time. I did it in my 5 reasons to watch UFC 183. I take that back. It was beforehand. And I said he was the greatest fighter of all time. He doesn't get that distinction in my mind anymore. That goes back to who I always thought it was. I kind of got all caught up in the hype and this and this. Back to Fedor Emelianenko. Do we know if he's clean? No. But did he ever test positive for performance-enhancing drugs? No. He did not. And so it's hard. I'm done with him. He's a great... And someone said this to me. I don't remember who it was. It was just an off-the-cuff conversation at a show we were covering. And someone said this to me, who is he beaten to justify being pound for pound the best fighter ever? And the only guy I can rattle off on the top of my head was Dan Henderson. Look at someone that wins. No offense to Tails Latis, he's not a good winning streak, but Tails Latis. Travis Lutter. Chris Lieben. Damian Maya. Chael Sonnen. Two-time drug cheat Chael Sonnen.
Right.
You look at someone, I'll give him Dan Henderson and Forrest Griffin. I was very impressed with the Forrest Griffin one. James Irvin. Then name another guy. Stephan Bonner, who was a 2-time drug cheat.
Awful. That was just to save a card. That wasn't a deserved shot or anything like that.
And how can you say this guy's the greatest fighter of all time? And you sit, and I always said that to people, and then people kept pounding him. Oh, come on, Steve, come on, you gotta get with it, come on. And I'm like, oh, I bought into other people's hype when I didn't. I should have listened to me. And it's depressing. It's sad. And I almost cried, and I don't cry about sports.
Right.
I got married 6 weeks ago. 7 weeks ago, I cried at my wedding. But beyond that, I don't really. It's sports. Why should we get that emotional about sports?
Yeah, but isn't that what sports? I mean, sports does that. Like when you feel the emotion of sports, isn't that? I mean, that's what it is. You've been in the MGM Grand and you've been in the United Center. There's a different set of emotions when you're in those situations. And I've told my wife this, I've told my friends this, that there is absolutely nothing on earth that was cooler than George St. Pierre walking out for his fight against Johnny Hendricks inside the MGM Grand. Like, the emotions that I felt were amazing. I said how great that was, but then a year later, I went back to MGM Grand and was in there when my high school friend Brian Ebersol got his hand raised, and I was almost in tears. I mean, that's what sports is about, bringing out the emotion in you. I mean, so, yeah, is it weird that something like Anderson tarnishing himself brings out emotion? No, not so much. But that's why we tune in when they put on all these cards, I guess.
And I always distinguish my professionalism, from being a fanboy. I try it hardest, and my friends will tell you when I'm at home, and I'm watching the fights with them, I'm getting into it. I know I got to cover it, and it's my job, but I'm watching the fights as a fan, but I'm also watching the fight as a journalist. But I look at it as a combined of both. In a situation like this, it's hard. Mm-hmm. Because you want to be like, how dare you did this? Why would you do? The question is why. I think he owes a lot of people a lot of apologies.
Yeah.
And it's not just he owes the UFC, Nick Diaz, his family, his team. He owes the country of Brazil. He owes a lot of people a lot of apologies. And he can't get away with not talking, because if you don't talk, it makes you more guilty.
Yeah.
I'm shocked he didn't already come out with a statement. I would have tried to nip this in the ass already. Hopefully he comes out with a statement tomorrow. He needs to come out with something. And Nick, we're not going to hear nothing from Nick. I reached out to Cesar Gracie, and I'll be shocked if I'll probably hear something from Cesar at about 2 in the morning. And I like Cesar's a great guy. Don't get me wrong. A very, very nice guy. He always gets back to me. But let's just say at the airport, this is now 3 straight UFC pay-per-views where we have fighters testing positive for failing drug tests. And this doesn't set a good precedent. Go back to what you said earlier, Dave, and what do you think? 3 straight cards now that we have fighters failing drug tests.
Sounds like a pattern. What's that saying? Fool me once, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you. Yeah, whatever it is. 3 times makes a pattern, and if you're one of the detractors of MMA, like if you're not a big fan, oh well, I bet Ronda Rousey, I bet she's on the juice, or ooh, look at Kat Zingano, she looks pretty ripped, like she could, look at Cyborg, or there's all these things that are getting ready to happen. When the thing that kills me is they say the time is now. Yeah, everything is leading up to it to be that the time is now, but you have arguably 2 of the best women that are. This is probably going to be the best title fight that they've had coming up in February. They have Holly Holm, who everybody wants to be the next big thing, as the co-main event, And, like, there's some good fights in between there. They got the Colorado card, and I think there's a Brazil card. But, we're supposed to be talking about that stuff. But when Dana goes to L.A. and has his press conference, the questions are going to be, what are you going to do with Anderson? What are you going to do with Nick? What are you going to do with Anderson? What are you going to do with Nick? What are you going to do with John Jones? What are you going to do with all this? When it should be, remember 2 years ago when you didn't have women, and now they're main eventing pay-per-views, and they're the main event and the co-main event. So instead of it being the time is now, actually the time is back there, because now we're going back to 183, 182, 181, when we should be focused on 84, 85, 86, and that's what drives me crazy. And I'm going to end my statement with a question for you. Somebody I follow on Twitter, JM Adams 03 on Twitter. UFC should take a serious stand. Year-round random testing. One failure equals banned for life. Be the leader, force a change. Hashtag the time is now. What do you think about that?
I've said it for day one. Just talking to media members, and you see it on Facebook, you see it on Twitter, and and we talk at shows, and it's been the general consensus. And I don't word this correctly. I don't want to say the UFC is ignorant of it, because they are footing the bill for these drug tests, and they're trying to curb the wrongs, because they know what's going on. And you're seeing now a habitual pattern. You're seeing a pattern and a pattern and a pattern and a pattern and a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
You got 3 pay-per-view cards in a row now, and you have this happening, and it's a black guy in the sport. And it needs to be random year-round testing, period. It is hard, and I agree with the UFC when they say, all these guys are around the world. That means you get in touch with regulatory labs that are in these countries, and you get it done.
Yeah.
You have to get it done. It's not, this isn't a cat and mouse game anymore. It used to be the old saying, dummies get caught if they fail a drug test. But now the fact they're doing random drug tests, now you got guys getting caught doing things. This is nothing but good for the sport. I want a clean sport of mixed martial arts. This is the greatest sport in the world. I'm not saying this, I get paid for a living to do this, and not just because I'm a fan as well. It's because this is the greatest sport in the world. I love when my wife said it to me the other day when we were sitting there talking. She's like, and she was at work, and a coworker was like, "Oh, what does your husband do for a living?" And she's like, they asked her Monday. They're like, "Yeah, it was yesterday." They're like, "Oh, what does your husband do for a living? And what'd you do this weekend?" And she's like, "I watch guys punch each other in the face." It's my husband. I got my wife in. My wife's not the biggest fan, but my wife will watch it because she loves me and she'll tolerate it. But now she's becoming a fan. And, and it's the greatest sport in the world. I've been raised in people hitting each other in the face since I was a little kid, and watching boxing and, in the Tyson era, and then, you go through the Lewis era, and now the Klitschko era, and you got the Mayweathers and the Pacquiaos and a lot of other great boxers, Roy Jones and Bernard Hopkins, a lot of great boxers in the sport. And you get this sport, and it's not just boxing and not just stand-up, it's wrestling, it's jiu-jitsu, it's karate, it's the strategy. You got the showmanship, which to me is a vital part of the sport right now, and that's good for the sport because it helps sells a fight. But when you got the greatest fighter of all time acting like a dope and thinking he is bigger than the sport of mixed martial arts, I can get away with doing performance-enhancing drugs. Nick Diaz don't care. He'll smoke marijuana, and he really doesn't care. That's just Nick. Nick don't care about anything. Nick cares about getting paid. At the end of the day, he's about getting paid, and good for him. He's going to get his money. He's going to get some money now taken away from him, but he's going to get paid. When Anderson says, I'm about legacy, and I fight for this, and I fight for this, the word means crap, buddy. It doesn't mean anything anymore. You no longer get the benefit of the doubt. And I know people, they're going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And it's fine, and that's their prerogative. But he's a cheater. At the end of the day, he's a cheater. And the UFC needs to get on top of this. Dana White needs to be talking to the media, not declining phone calls and saying, I don't want to talk, go read the statement that we put out. You have to, the UFC needs to be on top of this. It seems like they're more worried about 5,000 other things than this. They're lucky this didn't happen last week. Yeah. They're lucky. I don't get what happened to Utah. January 9th. Nevada alleges they got this test yesterday. I'm not very good in math. How does 24 days lapse between January 9th and February 2nd and you don't get the results of a drug test? That isn't right.
And out of competition.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I don't know. It defeats the purpose of an out-of-competition drug test if you test them out of competition and you get the results back after competition.
What does that mean then? It doesn't mean anything. It's a joke.
Yeah. I mean, it's like saying, it's kind of like, you know, at the end of the school year, you get like a B- in your class, and it's kind of like your teacher being like, hey, you remember that midterm, like in October? Like, had you passed that, you would have got an A in the class. Like, that information does me no good now. You know, you know what I mean? Like, thanks a lot. That was a month and a half ago. Like, the drug testing needs to be like this. I don't care. I'm looking on my computer here at Zach Makovsky and is it Tim Elliott?
Tim Elliott.
Yeah, Tim Elliott. They are kicking off the Fox Sports 1 prelims this Saturday night from next Saturday. From Bloomfield, Colorado.
I'm mad at the UFC, by the way, for having a card on Valentine's Day. I wasn't very happy with it.
Yeah,
I had to explain that one to my wife. It was really difficult, to be quite honest.
But my point is, when you test, you had better test John Jones. You'd better test Anderson Silva. And I want Tim Elliott tested, because what I don't want is Tim Elliott to go on a run and then be the #1 contender, beat Mighty Mouse Johnson, and then pop for steroids.
I agree.
Don't test these guys just because they're in the main event. Every one of them. Like, anytime, you know what? When they're in Bloomfield, Colorado, every fighter whose home residence is Colorado should be tested. When they come to Chicago in July, they had better be at Clay Guida's house, Ricardo Lamas' house. Everybody that's from Chicago, you know, CM Punk's house, everybody. They all get tested because
you don't have to worry about CM Punk. When he says he's alcohol free and drug free, that ain't no gimmick. That ain't no catchphrase.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like, don't let these guys take that rise, you know, to stardom without being tested. You like you said, this is a sport we love, and you have to clean the sport up. You can be, I'll take a WWF quote, the worldwide leader, you know, in professional or you know in mixed martial arts.
Yeah.
Make the UFC the cleanest MMA organization on the planet Earth. And you know what? If that means Nick Diaz performs on Spike TV every 7th Saturday, so be it. You know that you have the best of the best and the cleanest of all of clean. But the problem that you're going to run into is you may have to go with Ben Henderson and Brandon Thatch as a main event for a card. I love it, but the casual fan might not be in love with it. But Anderson Silva, Nick Diaz sells. You know, like these big time fights sell. Nobody that was at Buffalo Wild Wings for Jones Cormier could give two shits that he had cocaine in his system. Like, I'm gonna go off on a tangent because, well, it's almost midnight and I feel like going off on one. Sorry for this is my pipe bomb. Yeah. So like I told you before, look at this. I have all these. I have toys. I got cards. Everything in my house has a UFC logo on it, right? Everything.
Including those pictures behind you, which are pretty snazzy.
Yeah, like I mean, there's all sorts of stuff. There's DVDs, everything you need. Anyway.
Showing us the house there. Man cave.
Yes. So, 15 years ago, nobody knew what the UFC was. When I say people didn't know what the UFC was, when you walked into Kmart, there wasn't like a UFC like T-shirt place or like toys or whatever, right? It was just guys in a cage throwing punches at each other. In that amount of time, they've got an app on my phone. I can watch fights on this computer, over here, everything, right? All over the world. Nobody gives a shit that John Jones had cocaine in his system. What if John Jones has a heart attack in the middle of the ring in that fight and dies with cocaine metabolites in his system? Everything that you know about the UFC, gone. Everything.
You must read sportingnews.com. Sorry to cut you off there, but I think I know some guy that wrote an article on it, and that was one of the things I put on there, and it was a mixed bag of feedback and emails from the fans, and some were understood where I was coming from, and some people were like, well, it's really harsh, but you bring a valid point. Anderson Silva was on steroids heading into the fight. What if something bad happened to Nick Diaz?
That's what see, yeah, and that's the stuff right there. Right now it's on Twitter. It's a bunch of words like he had. I'm looking at my Mountain Dew here. He had calcium disodium edita or what? Like some random word that's on there. That's all people see, and it's ha ha ha. The greatest of all time got popped on a test. Do you understand? Like people do not understand the fact that if something tragic happens in the cage and those drug tests come back and they're not clean, all that regulation and stuff that they've gone through trying to get into New York and all these different things, gone immediately.
Doesn't mean it.
The website, gone. The app, gone. All that stuff is gone. Because when the UFC first started, like Dana always says, porn was on pay-per-view, but the UFC couldn't get on pay-per-view. Now they're on free TV. If somebody dies and the drug test comes back, UFC is screwed. They got to clean it up, and they got to clean it up now. Like they said, the time is now. Clean that shit up.
I can't, I can't.
Sorry.
I can't say it any better. You spoke for me on a lot of, and I feel the same way on a lot of things, and and I talking to a lot of fans, and they say that to me, I'll just be hanging out with my buddies, and a lot of my buddies are UFC fans, and they're like, why aren't they cleaning this up? Mm-hmm. Especially with the John Jones debacle. Why didn't they clean this up? And you get this, quite arguably the biggest star beyond Ronda Rousey. Anderson Silva is probably the biggest star in the UFC, and this is a guy you touted as, and I keep emphasizing it. Pound for pound, the greatest fighter of all time. Pound for pound king, the greatest fighter of all time. Better than Fedor Emelianenko, better than George St. Pierre, better than Randy Couture, better than Tito Ortiz, better than Chuck Liddell. This was the guy. That was the greatest. I'll take the guy from Pride who never fought in the UFC, who had a 33-fight winning streak. I'll take him all day. At least I know. At least he didn't fail a drug test. We don't know what happened in Pride and Strike Force and in M1. We don't know. But if he was on steroids, I'd like to know where he was taking them. He was really had the biggest muscles in the world, but it's not about that. That's beyond the point. But they have to clean it up, and it's absolutely necessary that they do clean it up. This isn't a joke. And like you said, and I made this point regarding John Jones a couple of weeks ago, about a month ago now. There's going to come that point where someone's going to die, or someone's going to suffer a severe head injury inside that octagon. What in the hell is the UFC going to do then? You got to nip this crap in the ass now. Mm-hmm. Not this cheap method of we're not going to randomly drug test every fighter. We got 500. You shouldn't have 500 fighters on your roster to begin with. You could trim that shit just about in half. In my own opinion. You're holding 45, 46 events in 2015. You don't need over 500 fighters on your roster. You don't. You don't need it. That's too many. You can cut that down to about 300. The WWE is like 140 contracted talent on roster.
And they put on 50.
NXT, and they're 52 weeks a year. 52 Raws, 52 SmackDowns, NXT. God dang it. You know, there's no excuse for that many fighters. You say, oh, we got too many fighters randomly drug test. You're a multi-billion-dollar company. You got the money. Stop being cheap and do what's right for the sport. Because if you don't, and you said it earlier, Dave, they're going to lose it all.
Yep.
They're going to lose it all. And billions of dollars in the $40+ million hole you're in 2005, you were going to wish you were in that $40 million hole right now.
Yeah. It's one of those things too. You think if Dana White and the Fertittas foot the bill and they start testing, think about it this way. The UFC is owned by billionaires. Bellator is owned by multi-billionaires. I'm fairly certain that ONE FC is funded by
billionaires.
They
are.
So if the UFC does it, everybody else is going to do it, or they're going to be a joke, because people who are people who know are going to be like, oh, look, Matt Riddle's in ONE FC. Yeah, I want to watch that because he's all marijuana'd out or whatever, you know. And the UFC, to keep going back to the WWE, they're the worldwide leader. Regardless of if you hate Dana White or you hate his... People tune in and say, hey, we're going to watch the UFC fights. People, when you go to the bar, don't say, hey, are we going to watch the Bellator MMA fights? They say the UFC fights. They're the big dogs. So if they do it, everybody's going to follow suit. Everybody.
It's like that old game, follow the leader.
Yep.
Exactly what it is. You know, when you're a little kid, I played that game. You did.
I was awful at it.
And I know a lot of people play that game. You know, and you have to set the example.
Mm-hmm.
You can randomly drug test all the main event and co-main event fighters you want. Big deal. Like you said, you got to test the opening fight on Fight Pass.
Yep.
Like you said, that could be a guy that one day could be in that headlining spot. Whether it's a fight night or, you know, a Fight Pass card or fighting for the world championship or a card on Fox or Fox Sports 1. It doesn't matter. Every fighter needs to be tested. The question is, now this is the biggest fighter in the sport.
Yeah.
The greatest fighter of all time. If this doesn't wake up Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta, get their heads out of their ass. It's time to drug test. Kid games are over. The picking and choosing is done.
Yep.
You can sit here and I've seen people blaming Nevada and I've seen people blaming the lab in Utah. Yes, is Nevada pissed? Yeah. Nevada should be pissed because this makes Nevada look bad. Nevada's wondering why, and I kind of ripped Bob Bennett a little bit earlier on Twitter. I emailed Bob in a cordial conversation through email, and I could tell he was generally meant just in an email. Words are hard to describe without talking to him, but just in an email chat, I could tell he's frustrated because they would. And I asked him point blank, like, would you have canceled the fight? He said, absolutely. The fight wouldn't have happened. If we would have got that test 1 week ago, the fight would have been canceled, and I wouldn't have cared. You know, and I'm not blaming Nevada, and I'm seeing people blame Nevada, and I think that those are is it a little fishy? Yeah, but I'm going to give Nevada the benefit of the doubt because Nevada's been trying to get ahead of this. I don't agree about the marijuana stuff, and that's fine, and that's for another conversation. But this is mainly about Anderson. Steroids are bad for the sport. Cocaine's bad just in general. It's life in general, and the UFC has to do something.
Mm-hmm.
They have to. It doesn't, if this doesn't wake them up, if this doesn't change it, Dave, nothing's going to.
No.
Nothing.
Nope. It's not going to change because, like you said, you read those numbers of all the people who tuned in to the prelims and all that kind of stuff. People
and
keep tuning.
1.565 million viewers.
It's ridiculous. I mean,
it was a good undercard, though. Don't get me wrong. Very, very, very good undercard.
Yep.
In just kind of, let's see. I had something here. Give me 1 second.
To go back to your point real quick while you look up what you're looking up, you said that, like we both said, you need to test those guys who were on the undercard and all that kind of stuff. Neil Magny's on this upcoming card. We both know Neil.
I love Neil Magny. Great fighter.
We've seen him fight in Valparaiso for Hoosier Fight Club. Now he's all the way 6-fight winning streak. Look, to our point, to prove how smart we are, his first official UFC fight was the second fight on Facebook when he beat John Manley on the undercard of UFC 157. Now he's the fight before the co-main event. This is why you have to test them when they first start out, because you don't know who the next Neil Magny is. If Neil Magny wins his fight, he's arguably top 15. Now you're going to start testing him. Now that you've invested all those fights, sending him to New Zealand, to Brazil, to Australia, to Houston, to LA. Now that you've done all of that, you're going to start testing him. When I don't have the smallest idea that Neil is dirty or any of that.
Yeah.
But you could have tested him at the beginning. If he was dirty, he could be fighting at Podunkville, West Virginia, in some barn.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with fighting in a bar, man.
Well,
I like fighting. I used to have some good scraps in the bar.
Yeah, I
get what you're saying. I was just trying to make light of, and I agree with you about Neil Magny, and we both know Neil. Neil's a really good guy, and I'm looking forward to him extending his winning streak, hopefully extending his winning streak coming up on February the 14th out in Broomfield, Colorado. And I was wrong about some numbers, so I want to get this clear about the prelims on Fox Sports 1. I was on point with 1.5, but it was 1.546 million viewers. And during the McMahon-Tate fight, from 9:30 Eastern to 9:45 Eastern, 1,992,992,000 viewers, almost 2 million viewers. The UFC is on a roll. This isn't just a coincidence. It all started with John Jones, Daniel Cormier. Then you had the week off. Then you had the show in Boston. Then you had the card in Sweden. And then it rolled in this past Saturday night.
But okay, hold on. And see, but I'm in 100% agreement, Steve, 100%. But here's my problem. Everything is looking forward, right? Looking great. Everything, all that kind of stuff. Like you said, Jones Cormier, great fight. Find out about that after the fact. That's about the cocaine. Debbie Downer. Boston card, yeah, that makes sense. We had Conor McGregor, who's beat very few high-ranked guys, earning a title shot by beating a 2-time drug offender that's in the main event of a goddamn free card. Are you kidding me?
But 3.1 million viewers.
But it just proves to you that the
he's a draw.
But yeah,
whether you like it or not.
Right. But my point is, Dennis Seaver keeps failing drug tests, and he's in the main event. There was nobody at 145 pounds that you could just throw in to let Conor beat. It had to be a guy who failed multiple drug tests for steroids. That tells you where their mind is at. We really could care less if he wins because we think he's probably going to pop anyway. but let's just put the guy in there that, loves Lucky Charms and,
But look at it this way. At least Dennis Seaver passed his drug test.
Hey,
I give Dennis Seaver credit for that. He did pass drug tests. And we can sit here, and I agree with what you're saying, and I'm not a lot of people were fond of the main event in Boston, but it was about Conor McGregor. It wasn't about Dennis Seaver. It was to build Conor McGregor, build the fight to Jose Aldo. And that succeeded. 3.1 million people on a carrier that only is about 85 million homes. It's pretty damn good. Then you go to Sweden. 30,000 people in Stockholm, Sweden. The second largest gate and the second largest attendance in UFC history. Not the second largest gate, but the second largest indoor attendance in the history of the organization. Then you go to a $4.5 million gate on Saturday night. Probably really, I'm looking more around like 500,000 to 600,000 buys on pay-per-view. But it all gets overshadowed by John Jones and now Nick Diaz. All the goodwill is down the tube. It's down the tube. All the great news you had, and then you got a great February. I love Benson Henderson and Brandon Dash. That's a great fight. And I'm talking to Benson Henderson on Thursday. I'm looking forward to that conversation. I'm looking forward to talking to Brandon Dash next week. I think Brandon Dash has a chance to be a world champion. You got Mir and Silva. If Frank Mir wins in Brazil, looks like he'll fail. Not guaranteed that he's coming back, but if Brock Lesnar returns, that's probably going to be the fight on July 11th in Las Vegas. Then you got, like you brought up, Kat Zingano, Ronda Rousey, the debut of Holly Holm against Raquel Pennington. You got a lot of goodwill that can come up here in February. It's not off to a great start, though. No, but at the end of the day, the UFC has to get ahead of this, Dave. Well, they can't be. You have to be proactive. You can't just sit back, sit in the $1 million chair, in a leather chair, and just count the money. You got to be proactive in this situation. There needs to be a press conference, or there needs to be a media call. You got to put that foot forward. Be proactive, not just sit back and be like, well, not go on. And no offense to Fox Sports 1 and America's pregame. I like that show. And Mike Hill's gotten a lot better. But you need to speak to more than your own. Go on a network that airs your fights. Go on ESPN. Talk to the media. Do a media call. Do a press conference. Send a thing to the media. I'm holding a press conference Friday. I'm answering all questions. Or do a media call. We're having a media call Thursday at 5 Eastern. Nip this shit in the ass and get it done and over with. The longer you prolong it, because I think the UFC's tendency has been, let's not say nothing. Maybe people will forget about it. And we'll just wait. In this situation, you can't sit and wait. You have to go forward. Because if you don't go forward, the more you're going to get nipped in the ass. And I think the longer they wait, the more that's going to happen. I'm very intrigued by what happens here in the next 48 to 72 hours. I think the rest of this week is going to be really, really intriguing. I got two things for you. I have good media and bad media. Here we go. There's always bad media. There's not many bad media. I don't want to crap on people. Media for the most part does their job well. I got you. Here's what Ray. You can name them though. Go right ahead. Ray Flores from ESPN 1000 and many other. He's a jackass. No, I like it. He just texted me. He texted me like a half hour ago. Yeah, he's texting me during the show. He says, you can't drug test every guy. It's too expensive. I agree. Oh, no. They can do randoms, but like we were saying earlier, they have to have stiffer penalties like the NFL does. You got to drug test everybody. This isn't where you drug test 4 fighters. If there's 10 fights on the card, you drug test all 22 fighters. Randomly drug test. I don't care how much it costs. If that's what it's going to take to rid the sport of the guys that are doing performance-enhancing drugs, get them the hell out of here. I love Ray to death, but my view always with PEDs is random testing like the NFL, Major League Baseball. They're doing it right. The UFC always proclaims we want to be like bigger than the NFL. We want to be worldwide. Right now, your sport's a joke. And I never thought I'd say that about the greatest sport in the world. But right now, this sport is a flat-out joke. Well, you don't drug test, that's what's going to happen.
Well, here was my point to what you were saying about Dana needs to have a press conference or the UFC needs to have a press conference. The problem is, and this is definitely just my view because I know that you have multiple friends within the media members, but if you listen to a press conference, what makes me mad is if you listen to the Anderson press conference, 9 different people asked Anderson if this is the last time that we'll see him in the cage. I thought the first time that he answered the question when John Morgan asked it, I thought he pretty well answered it. He said, "My kids want me at home. I don't know what I'm going to do." 8 other media members asked him the exact same question. And here's the problem. Everybody wants to get a soundbite. Everybody wants to go, "Hey, Dave Sadler, Beyond the Cage podcast." They want to get that on like as a soundbite so that they can say they asked Dana the question. Instead of trying to promote your site when you're asking the questions, ask the questions. You know, like there are hard-hitting questions to ask when it comes to this. How come before that fight, before UFC 183 when they had their little press conference, nobody asked any questions about John Jones? Because I watch those press conferences because I don't have a life. And nobody asked him that question. But when it comes down to it, I can't get credentials to go when the show is here in Chicago, but these same guys who fly all over the world and don't ask any questions can get credential to any event that they want. That's the stuff that drives me crazy. You don't have to be a dick to Dana about it, but I feel like these people have a severe if you're writing, in my mind, I'm a terrible writer. I write in, like, I print. I don't know how to do cursive that well, and, you know, I'm not that good.
It's all right, man.
But you have a duty to me as the reader and the fan and the other media member to ask that question. The UFC is not going to let me into their press conference. I would ask that question. I would be very respectful of Dana White, but I would be like, "Dana, you know, UFC 183 was a great show, huge numbers, you know, it's trending, it's going to be a great show, but we have to ask, what's the situation with John Jones? The question's got to be asked." But when they get to Broomfield, Colorado, nobody's going to ask about Anderson Silva, and I think that that's terrible. And I'm sorry if I offended anybody.
No, don't ever be sorry. I seen that question a lot tonight, and a lot of that statement on Twitter. You know, and I don't know about Facebook. I really haven't been on Facebook too much tonight, but I've been really active on Twitter and just reading. You know, I follow all the journalists, a lot of the journalists I follow, and you know, reading, and some of them have said that same thing. A lot of fans, and I've had fans that have emailed me, have asked me that same question. Are you gonna write something about what's going on here and be critical? And I'm not anti anything. You know, I always call it like I see it. You know, and if that means I lose my credentials, so be it. You know, it's just a credential. I can still, Sporting News is going to pay me to write either way.
Right.
You know, until they see that I'm an idiot and barely, until they deem that, you know, my services aren't needed.
Right.
You know, but it is our obligation to report on this. It's our obligation to, you know, report the facts. You know, you got different types of journalists. You have journalists that just do video interviews. You have journalists that just write features. You have journalists that write, editorials or op-eds as they call them. You have some journalists that do both. You have the ones that just write news pieces. Or you have someone, they do all of them. There's a couple that do, I'm one of them. I'll write news, I'll do video interviews here and there, and, I haven't done them in a while, but coming up here you'll see a lot more of those, and I write my features, I'll write an editorial, I'll write a couple of different variety pieces, and it is my obligation and, other journalists' obligations to report the truth. But also, when you write an op-ed, you have to put some truth in there. You can't just go off on a tangent and say, well, how many people would want to say to Dana White, well, why in the fuck are you not suspending John Jones? I know plenty of media members that do want to say it, but you have to, like you said, Dave, you got to say it in a respectful manner, and that's the most important thing. Everyone, you trust me, I wanted to go off on a tangent about John Jones, but there's times and places for that, unfortunately. And what you're saying about Colorado is exactly correct. Is this gonna be talked about in Colorado? Dana probably won't even be in Colorado. He probably won't. You probably won't see Dana White until UFC 184. Plain and simple. They're cutting back. He's not doing as many media scrums. The only time you really see him not right now is during the press conferences, the post-fight pressers. So it's an unfortunate thing, but the media has to do their job. You got some members that, and we all know who they are, they do a great job. And that's some not so good. And it happens, I don't know what the credentialing process is. I don't care to know. I really don't care. It's all about your news outlet, obviously, who you're writing for, and what their traffic is, and so on and so forth. And I understand it. That's part of the gig. But it's also your job. Beyond the Cage podcast, you got an audience. Mm-hmm. And I've listened to your podcast. Podcasts are very good. Your viewership is going up on YouTube, and I noticed that some weeks are better than others, and that just happens with anything.
Right.
It just depends on the topic. And you give your opinion, and that's all you can do. You can't worry about the UFC, you can't worry about Bellator, you can't worry about ONE FC, World Series of Fighting. No one can ever take away, and this is the only thing I tell this to when I go talk at the colleges I've gone to. You have a voice. The First Amendment, the last time I checked, was freedom of speech. Give your opinion. Who gives a shit what the other people think? No one can take away your voice. You got a mouth, you got a hand, you got two hands, and you can type on the keyboard. Or like you said, your handwriting isn't so great. If you want to print out, like I tell people, they're like, oh, my printing sucks. My cursive sucks. Print 5 pages. My cursive isn't the greatest either. Males have bad handwriting, apparently. And that's part of life. But we all have a voice, First Amendment. No one can ever take that away from us. But it's also our obligation to report the news, report what's going on, and also give our opinion on what's going on, and put some facts into that editorial or op-ed, whatever the hell you want to call it. It'll get done. I have faith in the media in this story, because this is the greatest fighter, what people perceive as the greatest fighter of all time. This is big time. I talked to my editor at Sporting News. I didn't write the article this evening regarding this news. I'm writing the op-ed for tomorrow. But the traffic tonight's been insane. Talk to the people at MMA Junkie. I know the guys over there as you do. Traffic's been insane on this article. I know the editor at MMA Fighting. Traffic's been insane. MMA Weekly. I know the guys there. I know the associate editor. He's a good friend of mine. Traffic's been insane on this piece. This is a big story.
Oh, yeah.
And I know guys are going to be writing their op-eds that I know the guys at Yahoo. Their traffic's been insane regarding this.
What do you expect?
And I know every guy I talk to is going to write about this. This is a big deal. There's going to be no sugarcoating or no favoring the UFC or Anderson Silva. This is going to be you're going to see some good stuff in the next 24 to 48 hours. Not just from myself, but a lot of respected and a lot of really good journalists in this business. Because there's a lot of them that are good. Some people may not like them, but they're really good. And they're really good at their job. Sorry for that.
No, you're good, man. What do you expect to see on UFC tonight when it comes out tomorrow? Not much?
I don't know. I didn't even think about that. That's a very good question. They're going to talk about it.
They have to.
I don't know beyond Ariel and DC are on for tomorrow. I really don't know anything else beyond that.
I'm just curious.
I usually get an email. I can check my email really quickly here on my phone. Usually they send, the day before or the day of the UFC, the Fox Sports will send out who's going to be hosting the show, what they're going to be talking about, so on and so forth. I don't have an email. They haven't sent out nothing yet. But I don't know, man.
They're busy.
I would expect a Dana White appearance on America's pregame. If I'm going to take a guess, it's usually that's how the pattern is. I don't know if exactly that's going to be the case. But I would expect Dana to make an appearance on America's pregame, either tomorrow or Thursday, but I would presume tomorrow because but he's still got to talk to the media. This has got to be, you have to be proactive. You can't be just sitting back and, whatever. You have to, it's a big deal. This is the biggest news of the year. We'll end with this. Two more things. Is this bigger than the John Jones testing positive for cocaine?
Yes.
Why? You're talking about the UFC light heavyweight champion, the bright young star of the sport. I got, Nike, Gatorade. Now he's got the big deal with Reebok. Why is this bigger than a guy who was on a 2-fight losing streak, had won 16 fights in a row, but who is near in the decline of his career and not in the prime, entering the prime of his career like John Jones?
I think the Anderson test failure is a bigger deal due to the fact that John Jones failed his test. Because whether you want to believe it or not, the UFC is on Anderson's shoulders currently while they figure out this John Jones thing. And now, who's the face of the UFC right now? Because now that Anderson did this, chances are he's not going to fight again.
It's Ronda. It's Ronda. I've thought it's been Ronda since she entered the UFC. I wrote this a long time ago when I was at Bleacher Report. And I said it when I was hosting the critically acclaimed The Fight Club Chicago. I'm glad you like that one. But no, I thought she would be the face of MMA, not just women's MMA, but MMA in general. And she's the biggest star. If you just look at doing movies, TV shows, magazine covers, you can make the case she's the biggest star in MMA. And now, she definitively now is. It's no longer Anderson. I think John's on his way there. If you look at, I think that cocaine test can do some good for John Jones. I think, and I hope he gets the help he needs. But I have to pick right now. It's definitely got to be Ronda.
But see, here's my thing. At Christmas time, you could say Ronda Rousey face of the sport. If something were to happen to Ronda, Kat beats her, she breaks her arm, she breaks her leg, she can't perform in the octagon for a year. Well, you still got John Jones and Anderson Silva you can promote fights around. So let's assume that John Jones is out. Let's say they suspend him for a while and he can't fight Rumble, right? Say they do that.
Well, that's not going to happen, but I get what you're saying.
Humor me.
All right, I'll pretend.
Okay. Same thing with Anderson. Say he doesn't come back. So I'm looking at the UFC's pound-for-pound list. So you have Aldo, Mighty Mouse, Weidman, Pettis, Kane, Dillashaw, Lawler, Barao, Hendricks, Belfort, Cruz, and Verdum. Those are the people that they have.
Did you say Dominic Cruz?
It's on their list for pound. I just read the names down. So what I'm saying is, this is why the Anderson, greatest fighter of all time, arguably the greatest fighter of all time, and it comes after Jones fails a test where there's already, a black eye on the sport. Then he adds to the black eye. That's what, in my mind, that's what makes this a bigger deal than just Jones. Jones is a big deal, but combining the two, there was already a little fire going, and Anderson dropped a gasoline truck on top of it.
Good analogy. No, I agree. Yeah, very good analogy, by the way. And
thank you.
I never heard that. I haven't heard that in a while. But no, at the end of the day, no, you're right. And like we started when we began this, Dave. Pound for pound, the best fighter of all time. This was the claim going into UFC 183. The pound for pound king, the former pound for pound king, the greatest of all time. The number one ranked middleweight contender, the greatest fighter of all time. Because of his dumb decisions. Tested positive for two steroids. Not just one. Two. It's a bigger story.
Yep. Unfortunately, it's February 3rd, and the biggest story of 2015 has already been launched.
And we'll end with this. Will we see Anderson Silva back in the cage?
You just want a quick answer, or you want me to draw?
However long you want to go.
No.
Why?
The same reason that John Jones. Did you notice? This is going to be a long answer. John Jones, at his fight, you notice that he didn't do the pre-fight workout. He stretched, threw a couple of punches, and then signed autographs for 45 minutes. Before the biggest fight of his career against Daniel Cormier, 2 hours before he was going to fight, he walked out into Mandalay Bay, or wherever they were, MGM. He walked into the crowd and was signing autographs and taking pictures. Have you ever seen a fighter do that on fight night when they're the main event? I've never seen that or even heard of it happening.
He wasn't. That I do know, because I just started to catch up, but I did talk to someone, and he was extremely nervous. And just talking to people regarding the training, I've been to workouts. Dane Henderson, greatest example. I've covered 4 of Dane Henderson's fights. He's never done one open workout.
But John, my point is, John Jones has, when he doesn't, he's done the workouts, but it seemed like he was kind of preparing himself that, sign some autographs, take some pictures, kind of get the fans on my side because I know this drug test is coming out. Sure. Anderson Silva never talks about anything in his post-fight, Chael was a good opponent. We'll have a barbecue at my house, and that's all he does in his post-fight his post-fight things. In this one, he was very non-committal on if this was the end of him or not, and it's almost like he knew this was going to come out, and it was kind of like a farewell, a preemptive farewell is how I felt about it. That's watching it and now knowing what has transpired. I mean, Steve, if you put something in your body and then you're tested 3 days later, you're gonna know that you're gonna fail.
We don't know when he put that in his body, though. We don't know. He
had to have an inkling that. Put it this way: whatever he put in his body, if they tested for it on January 9th, he didn't put it in there in October.
It's available. No, absolutely. I mean,
110%. I mean, it's one of those where he had to have an inkling that it's possible, and
absolutely.
To him, when in the press conference when he was saying, I've talked to my son, and he says, "Dad, you don't need to fight anymore," which, as much money as he's made, he has no business fighting. There's no reason for him to fight.
His son said that after the last Weidman fight.
Right, but
it's not just something that just popped up instantly. It's something that has been discussed with him, and there was debate whether he was even going to come back to begin with.
Right, but
I see where you're going though.
But I mean, he came back and he's got this built-in excuse that Nevada suspended me for 3 years. I can't fight. I have to do this drug treatment, but my kids want me at home, so I'm just never going to fight again. It's already built in.
He'll be suspended 9 months.
Yeah.
Either 9 or 12 months. He'll get, considering it was 2 steroids, they may give him a year. But first-time offenders is usually 9 months.
But
he could technically fight in November. He could fight at the end of the year. He wasn't committed nothing beyond this fight to begin with, just from talking to people around him.
Right.
And Ed Soares, his manager Ed Soares, was on the MMA Hour on MMAfighting.com yesterday and said he expects Anderson to come back. This was before everything came out, obviously.
Yeah.
No one really knows when that was. That could be the end of the year. That could have been July, October, November. The earliest he can come back if he is suspended 9 months would be October the 31st. Because they'll go from either October 9th or October 31st. It just depends on what Nevada decides to go with if they do suspend him for that long. And we're still waiting the second test result from January the 19th. He was given a urine test on the 31st. He passed the urine test, which Nick Diaz did fail. So, but will he return? I want to say yeah, but I don't think he does. He's one of those guys when I don't want to say when the shit hits the fan, he leaves. But with this black guy around him, I just don't see him coming back. We're lucky if we even hear him talk again. Just considering the circumstance. He's never been a media-friendly fighter throughout his tenure in the UFC. So I wouldn't be deathly... I'm 99% sure he's going to retire. But I leave that 1% out there. And he's expected to attend that hearing on February the 17th. So I think that'll be very interesting 2 weeks from today. Well, now we're in February 4th. So, 13 days from now, we may see. He's required to attend. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Nothing will happen out of it. They'll just set a date for when the hearing will be. And it's kind of like court. You go to a preliminary hearing. Oh, your case is 1 month from now. Whatever. Either March or April, they'll do a full hearing and they'll lay down a suspension at that point. And so I don't expect him to be back again. It's a black eye on the sport. To me, this ranks as, in my mind, and not just being in the moment, Dave, but this is, in my mind, the worst day in the history of mixed martial arts.
I can agree. I mean, it. For the time being, it's one of it.
You can't. What's bigger than this story? What's the biggest thing? UFC 100.
Yeah, I mean, there's really not.
55,000 people at UFC 129 for George St. Pierre, Jake Shields. There's nothing that Brock Lesnar winning the UFC heavyweight championship. There's nothing that's Ronda Rousey making her, women's MMA debuting in the UFC. At UFC 157. This is the biggest thing in the history of mixed martial arts, and this is the darkest day. At least in my mind. I could be totally off base, but this is, in my mind, the darkest day in the history of MMA. And it's hard, and in all honesty, I'm ashamed to be a fan. Not just taking the columnist hat off and the podcast hat off and just being a fan. It's the worst day in the history of MMA. The pound-for-pound king, the greatest of all time. Now he's lumped in with Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, Alex Rodriguez, and Lance Armstrong. The guys that were the best in their craft. and then got busted and are known as cheaters. And that's what Anderson Silva is at the end of the day. And Dave, where can the fans find Beyond the Cage on Facebook, Twitter? When can the fans listen to the show?
It's that easy. Whatever medium you're on, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, it's just Beyond the Cage. So on Facebook, just search Beyond the Cage Podcast. And on YouTube, it's youtube.com/Beyond the Cage Podcast. We've got all of our old shows on there, so you can check any of them out. Any interview we do, Jim does a good job of turning them into YouTube videos. Got lots of good ones on there. We even had one of our friends help us interview Fallon Fox. That thing's shooting through the roof, man.
Now, when did that happen?
At the Outdoor War, the XFO Outdoor War in August.
Were you there, man?
I was there.
I haven't watched an interview yet. How was that experience? We're going to Fallon Fox now, but just in a couple sentences, how was that experience?
I didn't do the interview because I videotaped it. My friend, or our friend from, he writes for MMA Torch, Brad Walker, did the interview. Yeah, but he has a relationship. He knows Fallon from the gym or whatever. Regardless of how you feel about him and her, him or her fighting, Fallon did a good job of trying to promote him or herself to get into Invicta. That's kind of how the interview went, and I mean, him/her did a good job of doing
It's a little mean.
The right thing in the interview. But Fallon was cool with me. I don't know. Fallon's never going to make the UFC, but Fallon was cool with me.
No, not at all. But
yeah,
make sure you go ahead.
Oh, I'm on Twitter. It's twitter.com/vigilantejuice. And I
love that. One of the best in MMA, by the way.
Well, I'd like to put it on a billboard.
You got the money?
I do not. No, but please check out YouTube because we have a lot of good interviews. Paige Van Zant's on there. We got to do them with our good friend Eddie Wineland, and
that one did really well. I've never told you that, but mad props in that interview right after that whole John Jones debacle.
Yeah, I appreciate it. It was one where I've known Eddie for a long time, and he said he would come on, and he got real fired up and Facebooked me, and I was like, dude, you want to come on? And he came on, and one of my favorite interviews, and it kind of, considering how long he's been around the sport, it kind of opens people's eyes. It's definitely worth the listen, and like I said, you can check it out on YouTube, youtube.com/Beyond the Cage Podcast, and tomorrow's show goes live at 11 Central. We have an MMA manager his name's Adam Martin. He's Random Marcos's manager. I believe he's got 2 other fighters. I don't remember them because it's midnight. But he'll be on, and we're going to talk about some of the same stuff here, go over 183, and you can go right to YouTube and watch it just like they're watching us right now. And thank you for letting me come on your show.
A lot of people have been asking me about, when you get back to podcasts, and I have some big stuff that I'm not going to reveal yet to really anybody. The only one that knows is my wife, but this was wanting to get back into the water, just starting with this, and there'll be a lot of cool stuff I got coming up. So you will be contacted, Mr. Sadler, on a couple things. I do promise you that. I don't want to get all too excited yet until all of it goes through, but thank you so much. This has been a sad day in mixed martial arts, but I think a lot of good when bad things happen, I feel good things can come out of it, and I think we will get some good things out of the situation. And you can follow me on Twitter at SMulehouse and MMA. Catch all my stuff on sportingnews.com. I'll have a editorial up on this tomorrow regarding Anderson Silva, and I may have one more. As of right now, my editor only wants one piece up, so we'll see what happens regarding that tomorrow. But definitely that'll be up early in the morning. Facebook, Steve Mielhausen, Facebook.com/Steve Mielhausen. You can find this on YouTube. I don't know the link off the top of my head. I'll blast it out. Everyone can check it out. And for Dave, for Steve, we'll talk to you later.